And why am I showing you this? This is week 3. This is our forest from week 3. And this is the USD version of our forest from week 3. Hopefully you remember this, and if you don't, you can go back and open the file. The reason I'm showing you this is that this is a USD instancing setup. Lives in here. Remember I told you we'd be getting into these nodes later on in the course? This is where we start to do that. If you want to find the instancing setup inside of here, that's it there. There are 3 trees. There's our instancing setup. And I'm not going to run you through this. This is an advanced version because there are things like color variations happening in the trees without using variants and things like that. But to see how this is set up, you can open this file and take a look at what's being done in here. Okay, let's start from fresh. We'll go new file, we'll not save that, and we'll just save this as maybe in the right place, week 8. Once more, I'm going to need to import everything. And so once more, we have our monster. Let's create a graph. Now, if I've got him selected and I just hit create graph, he's going to turn up here. So we'll call this monster. Just to prove to you, I am not lying through my teeth. There's that. Why have I started a new file? Well, this is the other really good thing about USD. What I'm going to do, that's not what I wanted to do. What I'm going to do is I'm going to load in what we output here and use it in this file. And this should show you that, like, once you've made a stage in USD, you can load that stage and get references from it. But before that, I'm going to need to make a couple of layers for my USD. So once more, let's just create a stage. Just follow along with me here. So let's create stage. Create USD stage. There we go. And I need a couple of sub layers. If you're following along with the PowerPoint, we're on slide 26. I need a new layer for the king and a new layer for the crowd. So I can create or open USD layer here just by using the same context menu idea. And I'm going to create layer. And we're going to call this guy the king. Put it in whichever folder you prefer. I prefer a USD folder. And we'll do that again. Create USD layer. I'm going to call this one crowd. So now we've got our 2 sublayers set up and ready and waiting for us. I'm going to create our king first. And our king is going to be the USD file that we just made. So let's just break this for a second because we don't need this right now. It's going to be the USD file that we just made. So I'm going to do open USD layer. Then I'm going to define a USD reference. And this will get me the USD definition. So this goes into layer. And we need to change our archetype to payload. And this will load or unload the reference. So once we've got this in, what we've actually got here is a reference definition. And I'm going to take this reference definition and add it to my stage. Well, before I do that, I'm going to define a USD param. I'm going to call this king. So that's the name of our primitive there. And that's going to go into the reference definition there like that. Making sure we've got payload selected here. And let's add that to the stage. So let's just output the stage. And you can see we've got our friend here. Better make lighting 2-sided so everything looks right. We've got our friend that we built before. Now we can take a look. Let's just hide the Bifrost graph for a second because we're back in USD proxy land. For a start, you can see in the layer editor that you've got things in your layer now. Okay, you've got your Bifrost-USD, your crowd, and your king. That's just what we've set up here. But I'm more interested in the king right now, which is the file that we brought in. And if I open that up, you can see it's brought everything in just how we set it up. We've got this little icon here, which is showing me that it's a reference, or it's a payload rather. And all of my variant sets have come in with it. So let's make him a gradient for now. Oh no, we'll go back to noise and just like that. So that's fabulous. If I've got an asset set up like this, I can bring it into another asset like I'm doing now and use it in that asset. The other thing too is that you don't need to specify the prim type here for the king, because it takes that type from the reference. It knows what it's doing by referencing it in. And what I'm going to do here is add it to the first sublayer, like that. So the first sublayer we made is this guy, is king. That's going to be layer 0. So we set, when we add to stage, we add it to the layer that we want, which is this one, layer 0. You can also go in here and unload it if you want to. It's still there, but the reference is no longer loaded. This is really good if you've got a lot of assets coming in and you want to hide and show things. You can load it and it's all good. It all comes back, all of its internals come back, and its variant sets and everything. So it's just a way to load and unload that from disk, which is handy, especially when you're working in your setup, your Bifrost. Cool, so that's our king in. So enough of all of this referencing. What we kind of really want to do is start instancing, because that's what we're trying to talk about. So we need to define a USD point instancer. And to do that, I'm going to need to manually set my variants. So rather than coming over here and going, you know, I want the polka dot, and come back over here and go, I want the tulip. I need Bifrost to do that for me, more or less. So after our add to stage, we're going to do a set variant selection. Okay, set variant selection. We're going to pop our stage up in here. And we need to know what our prim path is. So that's just hierarchical again. If I select my proxy shape, and we'll just go across to our attribute editor, select the king, go to metadata, select his body, that's his prim path there. So you can just do that every time you want to copy and paste it, but you'll get to understand that the stage, this guy, there's no metadata on this. The prim path for this, if it was a prim, which it isn't, would just be the slash. This is the parent of everything. King / king. Body / king / body. So again, we come back to the hierarchical parent and child relationships, and that's what USD is built around. So it's really important that we get our heads around that. Anyway, back to what I was doing. I need to know what the prim path for king is, and now I know it's king body, because that's the primitive we want to set the variant on. Then we need the variant set name, which is, if you remember, color patterns. And then I want to choose a variant, and I've got over here, you can see there's my color patterns. I've got gradient, noise, and polka dot. So I want noise. You can also get variant sets from the stage and the prim path, which I think you'll find is in here. Well, no, that you won't find that in there, but I can set that in there, and I can just copy this, and this will give me an array of all of the variant names for this guy. And I bet you if I did a get from array, I could find out which one noise was. I could do it that way. I just thought I'd show you that to let you know it was there. So you can do it procedurally as well. So I'm going to get the USD attribute value. Get USD attribute value. Because I want to get the display color attribute of this variant. So our outstage, that pops into stage there. We need to make sure the type is something. Like, we know that it's a color variant. We know it's an array of flow-through values. So what I'm going to do is set the value type. Go to vector flow-through, and array. And that's more like what we're wanting there. We have to fill up some other things. So that's the prim path is, of course, king, body, noise. So we're getting the attribute, whatever attribute we're getting. And the attribute we're getting is primvars primvars colon display color. So you can kind of see what we're doing here. If I just go across to our ASCII file, if I go to my USD directory and just open this text file, Yeah, it's opened. I can sort of close up, so there's the master monster. I can close up the eyes. I don't need to look at the eyes. I don't need to look at the flowers or their variants. So that's cool. What I want to look at is the body. Okay. Here's the body. Here's the variants. String, color patterns, noise, variant sets, color patterns. So we could get our name from here. Okay. Here are the actual variants themselves. So there's gradient, there's noise, and there's polka dot. That there is the display color for noise. So that's what we're getting from our USD stage. This is what it's called in the file. So that's what we're going to need to call it to grab that attribute. Now you can open the USDA and copy that. You can come in here and quite happily just paste that like that. And it's all good. But that's where you find it. So now I need to do something else. This has now got our display color attribute in the noise variant. So what it's essentially giving us are these pink and blue patches here. Because I'm going to be scattering, right, I need to do something else. So I'm going to go from the same thing from the add to stage here. Just move that guy out of the way. And I'm going to read the USD meshes. And what this literally does is it reads all of the meshes in this for you according to your settings here. So this is reading all of them. We probably don't want to read all of them. We just want to read the body. And so what that's going to be again is king and body like that. And that's really all we need to worry about in there for read USD meshes. We can now start taking a look at this. I can hide the USD proxy and I can put in a Bifrost terminal because this mesh is a Bifrost object. So we have a syntax error, and I know what that syntax error is because I put one of my slashes around the wrong way, which is that one. So that has pulled the mesh from the USD file and recreated it as a Bifrost mesh with the display color, which is great. That's what we want. So I just want the first in that array. There's only one thing in that array. And we can check that out. So just hold over there and check that out with a watch point. And you can see it's got a point color right there. Point color on it. That's what it's pulling from the display color. So here we have a mesh from the USD file with its color per vertex in place, which is what we're going to use to scatter. So I want to scatter only in the pink regions of the noise. I'll be doing some Bifrost stuff, so I'm just going to leave the terminal up and hide the USD for now, because we're going to do our scatter in Bifrost. Okay, I'm going to use another attribute that was given that will be given to you. What we need to do is I only want to scatter on the pink, not the green. So for that, I need to change that pink and green to black and white. And I'm going to just really quickly make a compound to do it so you can learn from this, or you can just use the one we've supplied with it called assign weights. First thing I need to do is get the point color, geo property. There, it's math float 3, and the property is point color. Cool. It's our point color. Now, I happen to know that pink has something in the red, and this bluish green will have nothing in the red. So I can test all of this by how much red is in it, basically. So for that, we're going to need a vector to scalar. And that's all I'm doing here is I'm splitting this up into its component parts. And really all I've got to do is the red, which is called X here, is that equal to 0? And it's like if the red is equal to 0, and we don't want to scatter on the green here, which is where red is equal to 0. We just need that to be 0, but if it's not true, it'll be pink. Put that to 1. Sorry, my bad. I'll need to make sure these are float 3s, and then it's simply a matter of outputting white where there's red, or X in this case, and black where there's no red. We can pop those colors out, and we can take a look to see if I'm just like, if I've made a big fat mistake and nothing works, we'll just plug that into there and see what we get. And I've made a big fat mistake. Okay, so it turns out that it's not equal to 0. I should have checked my data first. Turns out that where it is blue, it is low. There is some red in it. So all I've done here is like, are you greater than 1/3 red? Because that's the white. That's what I do want. Okay, so we can come back out here. And I can just switch this over just to make sure we've got things the right way around. We've got things the wrong way around, but that's easy enough to fix. That's just a matter of swapping these two values around. That's the thing. Don't worry about it. Troubleshooting is good. We went through that like a lot in this course, and we'll plug that in and make sure we've got white where the pink is and black where the green is. And that's great. That's pretty much what I want. So this compound here is now retrieving the colors and flopping them to black and white. I don't need them as colors. I'm going to use them as weights. So that's really, really simple. I'm going to change these back to floats and just make sure we pop a 1 in the top one. And we can still use the assigned diagnostic material like this to test that, because assigned diagnostic material is smart enough to know what I want. Perfect. So we want to scatter on what's pink. That's what we've got. And now it's time to do our scattering. So I don't need either of those. I probably just don't need that anymore. Let's just watch this guy. So as we've done several times before, let's do some scattering. Scatter points let's scatter by radius. And let's make it blue noise. So to scatter, I'm going to need the object, and I'm going to need some density weights. Let's put a point scope down real fast so we can see what we're doing. Let's make sure that that's set to color and that the color is black. I just want little black points, and we'll make sure our size is quite small. Let's pop this guy out. And now all we'll have to do is drop our radius. So 1. Let's make sure we can see our object at the same time, so that might be a bit nicer. So we just need to drop our radius until we've got what we want. Point scope, change that to sphere, change the size to a bit smaller. So you can see that it's totally scattering where there's pink and totally not scattering where it's not. Go back to our scatter, just get everything looking. So 0.02 for the radius. Yeah, that's pretty well populated. I quite like that. And just to get some niceness going on, we're going to randomize the point scale and randomize the point rotation. And this just lets us randomize the scale and the rotation of whatever we're going to instance on this. I think maybe our amount should be a little bigger. Yeah, that's better. So you can instance whatever you like on this. What I'm going to use is I'm going to instance the same mesh. But before I do that, I'm going to make sure my point scale is set to 0.05 and 0.2 for the min-max. And let's just actually use the same mesh to instance this. Now, you need a USD point instancer to see this, which is going to be a bit more of a setup. So let's get onto that. Define USD point instancer. And this again is looking the same kind of stuff, right? You can call it whatever you like. I'm going to call it instancer decoration, like this. We'll just make selection mode sequential because we're only going to use one mesh. And I'll start hooking it up. So it's very similar to the Bifrost instancing. It wants points and objects to instance. So let's grab the points. And I have a mesh, which is this one, which is the actual guy himself. So it's our actual monster himself with his colors on. So that should make things a little bit interesting, but we can fix that later. But we can't just plug a Bifrost mesh straight into the USD point instancer. We have to actually define it as a mesh first. Yeah, I know this is a bit double handling. It goes from mesh to mesh to mesh. Well, USD to Bifrost to USD, but so I'm just going to call this guy King Proto because he's a prototype now because I've made him into a mesh. Let's plug him in to the prototype definitions, and then we'll add that whole mesh to the stage in layer 0, and we'll see what we've got. See if we add the stage, plug that guy in there. Now we're still looking at the Bifrost, right? So let's hide the Bifrost. We don't want to look at the Bifrost right now. Hide. And let's turn on the USD proxy. And you can immediately see what's happened, that it's instanced a whole bunch of copies of that little guy all over himself. Now they're too big. And like I said, it's very, very similar to a Bifrost instance, 0.01, 0.05, make them smaller. And so you've got the king, this guy, he's probably still got eyes somewhere, there he is. So you've got the king with all of his subjects crawling all over him. And again, they might be a little bit too big at one end, so 0.03, nice. And it's at this point, I can now like drop my radius a little and have more of them if I want to, because it works just like an instancer, so just like a Bifrost instancer. And in this case, we're pulling, if you remember back here, this was just to show you how you could get the color. I'm just using reading meshes with the point color on to get that color as well. If I was to just set property, we might as well do it since we're here. Make sure that's point color, like that. Yeah, it says, because it's got no point color now, it's trying to scatter by everything, and we'll just pop this point color in there. There you go. So it's the same result. I just had the import write the point color onto the mesh for me. And you see how nothing changed there, but if you didn't want to do that, you could do it this way. So we have like, there's the king, and everybody's happy. He's got all of his subjects crawling all over him, and we can set this to whatever we like, right? We could instance something else, we could set the radius to something else, we could scatter randomly instead of blue noise. In fact, let me do that now. There you go. So it is just an instancer, and it works just the same as a Bifrost instancer does. So anything you can change in the Bifrost instancer, you can change in the USD instancer too. But now maybe we don't want the king to be all pink and blue splotches, right? Let me introduce you to something called a USD override, which means we can override something with something else. So again, we just use a define USD prim, like this. And in this case, we're going to make sure that this is an over, because it's going to overwrite something. We're going to make sure that the path is /king/body/noise, like that. And make an attribute definition of a display color. And we're just going to make the display color sort of something a bit darker. So 0.2, 0.0, 0.4, kind of a really dark purple. And if I add to the stage here, pop this prim definition in here, and I've got a syntax error. And then we need to make sure that our variant is set to noise, because that's what it's overwriting. So instead of the noise variant now, what we've got is this purple color that we just set up, which I can make yellow or darkish green, darker green, or red, or whatever I want. So I set up all of those variants, and I'm literally overwriting the one called noise with this color. And I'm doing it here with a define USD prim set to over. So it reads what you want it to overwrite there, and you put in what you need to overwrite it. So now we've got king with a tulip, orange body, and all of his subjects just crowding around all over him. Which I might change back to blue noise just because I can. I didn't bring their eyes. Didn't bring their eyes with me, so they're all just blind subjects, but you get the idea. I mean, you could use flowers, you could use little crowns, you could use whatever you liked, and you can change the amount of things scattered. You've got all of the control of a scatter node. Now, next question. How do we get that guy out to Unreal? Well, let's keep going. What you should have worked out by now is that because this one doesn't have one, let's put in a save USD stage, and let's set up a new name like that. Enable it while we're here, make sure our meters per unit is set to 1, and let's drop that in, stage, boom. Oh, that's interesting. We got a little error there, cannot set layer metadata, meters per unit, and current edit target. because it is not the root layer or session layer stage. Okay. So that's something we have to watch out for. So let's turn that off. Turn that off. So I'm going to, for safety, I'm just going to delete the actor that we had. I'm not going to save my layers. And I'm going to open the one we just made. So these are the two that we set up. Here's week 8 king, open. He's there. He is just tiny. So I'm just going to go into his scale in Unreal. Scale that up. Now, he's there, but his instancing isn't. Or I just scaled the wrong thing. And what I will actually do is scale the entire USD actor, which is what you have to do when you don't have, you haven't quite worked out how things go. Something's a bit funny with the instancer there. Like it's a little bit bigger than the king, so have I still got a weird scaling on the king? I do. Unlock that, please. We have our king, we have our instancer, and you can see the instancer here. There are the prototypes. There's the instancer, we called it instancer decoration. We've even got a default material which the instancer has put on for us. But if we break this down, here's our stage, there's the king, there's our instancer. What I wanted to show you here was it's always worth just trying to see if the USD works and then troubleshooting maybe why it didn't, if it doesn't. But in this case, it really has. So that's USD instancing. We've got one more thing, which is materials in USD. So let's get on to that now.